tonight to demonstrate pretty quickly and simply how to make clarified butter, or actually ghee is the end product I am going for, because within our Whole30 food program guidelines, clarified butter or ghee is the only way that you can actually use this product. So I'm here to take you through the pretty simple process. Ghee is actually the butter that has been clarified and taken to a more flavorful, cooked, nice brown step in the process. So you'll see how that works. Ghee is a traditional Indian cooking fat, so you'll find that in Indian cuisine, and it is often referred to as liquid gold and food for the gods and whatnot and so on. So basically, to get started, I'm just taking a nice big block of Kerrygold, and most recipes that you see always say use unsalted butter for clarified butter, or you must start with unsalted butter. Well, I'm not. And I'm going to show you that it's okay if you don't have unsalted butter. You can still make clarified butter or ghee. The only difference is you're going to get the salt settling out with the proteins. There might be a little left in the butter fat at the end, but I have never really seen a significant amount of salt come out because we're separating the butter. We're separating the water. We're boiling the water off and separating. The whey protein is going to rise to the top. The casein protein, the milk proteins are going to settle down to the bottom, and the lactose will settle to the bottom. And I find that the salt goes with the protein, so it'll be on the top or on the bottom. And then we skim that off. We pour off our solid butter fat, and then we discard the browned bits in the bottom of the pan. So I see no reason why we can't use salted butter, and I'm here to prove that. So, starting with nice grass-fed Kerrygold butter, I'm just going to unwrap that here. And it's room temperature. Doesn't really matter if you start at room temperature or refrigerated, because we will be melting it. It's probably easier if it's easier to cut, actually, if it's refrigerated, because now this is really soft. This would be good spread on bread right now. You know what? Yep, this is nice and really soft. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it to my pan, because this isn't cubing like it would straight out of the refrigerator. So I'm just going to slide that in a nice heavy bottomed pan, because we don't want to burn this. And I'm going to turn my heat on to medium-low just until it gets melted, and then you're going to keep it on low the whole time while the butter just melts out. The point here is, again, we're trying to separate the components of the butter. So we want the milk proteins and lactose and salt to sediment out to the bottom. The water is going to boil off through, and we'll get rid of that through evaporation. And then we'll have a layer of whey protein on top that will skim off and then filter off, and we'll be left with delicious, flavorful ghee or clarified butter. So I'm going to get this melting, and then we'll show you what it looks like. So what we have here is the butter has melted down. I have it set to very low heat, as low as my stove will go, and this is going to vary per cooktop and what the weight of your pot is. But anyway, you see the bubbles and the foam, the skimmy, the scum on top. That's the whey protein, and it's actually probably going to have a fair amount of salt in it as well. And then the bubbles coming through is the water, the moisture being driven out of the butter, because butter, I think, is only like 80% fat, maybe 20%, 15 to 20% water, something like that, I used to know. And then we've got the little bit of milk proteins, and lactose is maybe the remaining like 2 to 5%. But actually salted butter probably has about 2% salt. So that is going to settle to the bottom. So it's probably been about 5 minutes, and this smells really fragrant and buttery, and it's still bubbling away. The water is still being evaporated off, boiling off. But because I'm standing here and I want something to do, and you may feel the same way while you're clarifying butter, you can go ahead and start removing the scum, the whey protein. So you can just skim that off. You don't have to do that now. You could just leave it, but I just figure I might as well do it. In French cuisine, they call this dépouillage, which is skimming the scum. Oftentimes when you're making soups and stocks, it's the impurities that always come to the top, which the impurities in this instance are the milk proteins that we are trying to avoid. So I'm just gonna take some of these off. You don't really have to worry too much about getting it all because there is a straining step later. We'll be straining it. You could strain it through a butter muslin or cheesecloth or coffee strainer. I've got a couple of tea bags that I've got a lined little bitty strainer with, and so once this has finished boiling all the water off and browning the proteins in the bottom, I'll strain it through here into my jar and be left with just the liquid gold portion of our ghee. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just going to sit here and dépouillage while this bubbles up. And don't be alarmed, you're probably going to lose about 25% of your butter in this process because you're losing the water portion, you're losing the sediment, and the stuff that you have to scrape off. So if you need a specific amount of butter for a specific recipe, make sure you estimate, you think about the fact that you're going to lose about 25% of what you start with in this process. Alright, we'll be back in a few. Okay, so now you can see all the little bitty bubbles accumulating, and it's actually producing a foam. And I think, in my opinion, this is the main difference between trying to do this with salted versus unsalted butter. All the moisture at this point has been driven off. Like this is the last little bit, and the salted butter actually foams a little bit more than if you were using unsalted butter. But there's nothing wrong with this. I'll turn the heat off at this point, but right now it's actually browning the milk proteins in the bottom because finally all the moisture is gone. So this is where we're developing that rich, delicious flavor of that ghee. So it's kind of that browned butter flavor, nutty, really sweet aroma. This is going to be delicious. But at this point, when it starts to get all foamy like this, you can't see how dark it's getting on the bottom, but just kind of let it go. And then I'm going to turn off the heat at this point because there's nothing else coming out of this. And we'll skim this layer off and then pour off. Okay, so I let that really thick foam. Well, I skimmed a little of it off, but then I've just kind of let it settle down again so that it'll be easier to remove. There are several ways that you can go about removing this, but I think just let it settle down, and you can see it's a nice kind of rich, dark, golden color underneath there. I probably could have let it go even longer for more of a nutty ghee flavor, but you can see some of the whey protein actually did brown as well. It caramelized a little bit, and again, that just contributes to making this even better than butter. If you can imagine, and if you could smell this nice caramelly sweet aroma, it is so good. So this is also the same thing as like drawn butter. You'll also, often hear of drawn butter, clarified butter, and ghee. They're all kind of the same thing. Ghee has just been taken to this browned butter stage. So you don't have to worry about getting all of it because I am going to strain it through my double tea bag strainer into a nice clean jar. I use olive jars or even coconut oil jars. Right now I have what I have here. So I'm just going to now take this little bit and pour it right through very carefully right into my jar. And again, this pot is not meant for pouring, so try very cautiously to actually not get too much on the countertop. We don't want to waste this. This is a precious resource. It took in all about 20 minutes maybe to get it to this point. And again, this residual whey protein and salts on top will just be filtered through. Darn, I don't like to lose it on the counter. It's better if you have a saucepan that has a nice little pour spout. That would be your best bet. I have one, but it's too small, so this is my next size up. But my other one's a little bit better for this purpose because I'm dripping butter all over the counter. So be careful when you're pouring it off. This is a nice little strainer. I got it at Tiger Store. It was very cheap, so you don't need anything fancy for this. Just a pot, a jar, a strainer, and some coffee filters or whatever. And we'll keep on pouring it off. And I'll just keep doing this in little increments, and we'll be right back with the finished product. Alright guys, so I just finished pouring off all the liquid gold ghee into my container here, and as you can see, we have some brown sediments left in the bottom, and those are to be discarded. So that's just, again, the casein protein, the lactose, probably some of the salt, all the bits that we didn't want from the butter. My little, that fit perfectly in that jar actually. My little sieve with the filters can also be discarded. And what we have left here, ow, that's hot. Don't lift it up immediately. Yeah, because that's still at a very warm temperature. But what you can see in general is a lovely crystal clear clarified butter or ghee. And because the proteins and the moisture have actually been removed from this, you technically don't even have to refrigerate it. And if you do refrigerate it, which I still recommend, it extends the shelf life. We've taken out all the stuff that go rancid and allow it to go bad. So you can actually keep this stuff for a really long time. I don't know why you would keep it for a long time because it's so delicious and it's a very healthy fat. We've used our grass-fed, really high-quality butter. So you can include this on any of your dishes. Mix it into a compound butter, melt it over a steak. Oh my God, it's going to be so good. And lastly, this whey protein that we have skimmed off of the top. You can actually keep this or feed it to somebody in your family who can eat dairy right now. This would be great drizzled over some popcorn. That's one use of this little bit of whey protein with salt and a little melted butter in it. Yeah, drizzled over popcorn, but we're not going there. Give it to a family member that you don't love very much. All right, and on that note, eat healthy, and I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.